I guess you might have heard that Poland has recently been called the worst European Union country for the LGBT rights. And your invitation shows that you want to be in solidarity with the Polish LGBT community, which is just great. And the situation in Poland is a result of scapegoating of the LGBT community by authorities at different levels of government. We have a president who was running for re-election last year, who said that LGBT are not people, are not human, that this is just ideology. And then we have the Minister of Education saying that human rights are just silly. Then we have local governments which are using LGBT people as a political tool. Just imagine around nearly 100 governments, local governments, adopted resolutions or declarations discriminating against the sexual minorities. And in these documents, they pledged to promote traditional family values, to stop the gender and LGBT ideology, to stop aggressive homosexual propaganda, or to stop homo terror and sexualization of social life. And next we have different extreme conservative organizations. We have Catholic bishops, far-right groups, fascists, among them, which launch different anti-LGBT campaigns and use manipulative language, demonizing members of the community. It's shocking, I know, but they use language clusters like gay and pedophile. One of their strategy also is a reversal strategy, where they are saying that the majority group, the Catholics, the Christians, that they are the oppressed group and not the LGBT community. And just as an aside, I would like to tell you that the official propaganda uses an umbrella term here in Poland for the left, feminists, LGBT activists, and they are all neo-Marxists. And in this narrative, LGBT ideology, as they say, is even worse than communism. As far as the church is concerned, you need to know that the ruling class has embraced Catholicism in Poland as our national identity, and especially nationalists with the government's acquiescence are on a crusade now, and they equate Catholicism with white Polish identity. So religion is being weaponized to fight for power. The Law and Justice government gave green light to different religious extremist organizations whose aim is to change the law in Poland so that it reflects Catholic doctrine in its fundamentalist version. Separation of church and state is fiction here, and bishops use strong stigmatizing language. One of them talked about a rainbow plague. Right, so as a result of this hostile environment, people who do not want to hide their identity, their sexual orientation, have left the country, but those who stayed back, they organized various forms of resistance. And take, for example, these municipalities, local governments I mentioned earlier. Most of them are in the southeast of Poland. They adopted these resolutions not to allow any promotion of LGBT equality. And one of the activists in Poland installed road signs next to speed limit signs in these locations. His signs read LGBT-free zone in different languages. So he was flooded with lawsuits, but there are 5 court rulings in his favor, 3 acquittals and 2 dismissals. And as a result of his campaign, these zones have been denounced by top European officials. The governments were threatened that the funding under one of the EU financial mechanisms would be withdrawn. And some of these local authorities, they have already repealed these resolutions. Not all of them, but sadly, but lots of them have repealed these resolutions. So the activist's name is Bart Staszewski, and he protested in the same way when one of the city mayors said nasty things about the LGBT community, something about Sodom and Gomorrah, things like that, you know. But there are also more radical activists and collectives in Poland. One of them was accused last year of causing €1,500 worth damage to a van painted with homophobic slogans and might be harming the driver. That was a desperate act of resistance. The person was arrested, she was arrested, and people protested against her arrest. They placed rainbow flags on stages and were harassed by the police. And that happened last year. And these events are now remembered in Poland as the Rainbow Night. Because the protesters were interrogated at night without access to water or food. And some random people got arrested. And the police were brutal. And one more thing that I wanted to mention, and another form of putting up resistance by the community, just happened last Wednesday. One of the organizations, Campaign Against Homophobia, launched a new program providing legal assistance to all those facing harassment and persecution as a result of their pro-LGBT activism. And this is a countrywide network of lawyers who will provide assistance in cases of unjustified raids in private homes, undue arrest, brutal detentions, or overextended interrogations. And they may also provide assistance when a principal of a school gets in trouble, for example, for organizing Rainbow Fridays at school against the ministry guidelines. And of course, there are pride marches in Poland as well. These have been held since 2001. They are gaining on popularity, and in 2019 there were around 50,000 people marching in Warsaw. And my organization helps organize these marches. I wanted to comment on the All Poland's women's strike in the context of the LGBT rights. So actually it was the other way around. So the LGBT community supported women's struggle, their fight for reproductive rights, and the leaders of the strike at one point left these people out from the struggle. They ignored their demands, and when it came to making political postulates, right, they felt ignored at one point, I remember. So I can't remember discussing same-sex marriages or adoption of children by same-sex couples. That was not part of the struggle. It did not become part of the struggle of all Poland's women's strike. But you have to bear in mind that the leaders of the strike were liberals, not socialists. So they were very limited in their demands and in their vision of the society. And they fought for reproductive rights and for sexuality educations at schools. And when I talk about sexuality education, what they had in mind was the LGBT youth situation at school. So in that sense, they joined the struggle with the LGBT activists, but not in terms of same-sex marriages or adoption of children by same-sex couples, right? So the movement has been hijacked by the liberals to some extent. And also our pride parades, marches, yeah, they have also been hijacked by businesses and liberals. This year was an exception to this rule because of the pandemic restrictions, I guess. So businesses have not provided these loud, big platforms, so the atmosphere was different. Right, and thank you for all the points you raised about exploitation and oppression and the ways to end it. And the need for us to imagine a different society. It's all really uplifting and, you know, inspiring. So thanks a lot.